Good evening, Central Illinois. Good evening, Sports 2.0 Network followers. Welcome to the Colten Kahler Show. I am your host, Colten Kahler. Pleased to be joined tonight by my good friend, former Saturday morning co host as well, Alex Staub. Alex, thanks for coming on tonight.
Looking forward to it. Should be fun.
So we'll start here, Alex. You're very involved with a lot of things in the Central Illinois
That's
area, but
that's
we
one way to
do
put it.
we do have a wide following here on the Sports 2.0 network. For those that don't know Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So basically, I do a wide array of things. Probably my biggest role or most prominent role is probably ICC women's basketball. I do play-by-play for them. I'm going to be in my fifth season here, coming up in a couple weeks. Hopefully, a couple months shy of a national championship. I don't know. They did make the Final Four last year, but then I do Metamora girls basketball. Kind of help out with the media with Metamora football. You and I will be at Illinois Charlotte on Saturday, which talk to me after the game as to how I feel about it.
Upset alert.
But
Upset alert.
but yeah, basically just about everything under the sun. And I just got done with the IESA state softball finals. I work that as well, so I do a little bit of the state association stuff, particularly with softball. So basically, it doesn't stop from January to December. I get a little bit of July off, but that's about it.
So you know, jack of all trades, if you will.
I suppose so.
Well, what we do here is a little bit of sports talk, and if that's what you want to call it, it's pretty much conversing and blowing my hot takes all over the Sports 2.0 network. If you have comments, chime in, please, in the comments section um, on Twitter, Facebook, any of those. Please bring those in. But we're going to debut a new segment tonight. We are going to debut the hot take, hot seat segment. It is going to cut off our face a little bit here. I think we might, if we're able to, there we go, bring up our cameras. There we go. Yep, I did not clip that off low enough. But a new segment tonight, and hot takes. You know, they're supposed to be a little far out there. And I saw this one this week, and it really caught my interest. Should Ben Roethlisberger be added to the list of worst QBs to win a Super Bowl? And I put it out there on Twitter today, and I have a lot of Pittsburgh friends. They were outraged. They were furious because they think that I'm calling Big Ben the worst quarterback of all time. And I'm not calling Big Ben the worst quarterback of all time. I am just saying he is some of the worst quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl. Now, this is an old thing that it's been thrown around. It's from Bleacher Report, and I think rightfully so. There could be a case made for it. If you look at the last 5 years, I mean, he's been non-existent because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He looks bad when he is playing. I mean, last week they got manhandled by the Bengals. I can't remember the last time the Steelers had a good offense. He has been carried throughout his career by a stud defense. He had those few good years with Le'Veon and with Antonio Brown and everyone else. Tom saying he might be bad now, but his prime was very good. That could be true. That could be true. But here's the thing. If you look at his Super Bowl performances, they're not great, right? His first Super Bowl, he was carried by a great defense and a great running game. In that first Super Bowl, he threw, I think, his stats, are downright embarrassing. He was 9 of 21, threw 2 picks, and finished with a 22.2 quarterback rating. That's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah, well, I think you got to start with this, and I'm going to backtrack all the way to the beginning here. To me, and maybe this is just, the hey, I hope everyone has a good game mentality, but that list shouldn't exist. If you've won the Super Bowl, I don't care what your roster makeup is, you've won a Super Bowl, and that's always going to be part of your resume. Now, naturally, there are going to be quarterbacks that are better than others that have won the. That's just the nature of the game. But to call someone the worst quarterback to have won one, or for there to even be a list, I think is stretching it a little bit.
looking at Ben's second Super Bowl, it was one of the most amazing Super Bowl games that I remember in my life with the Cardinals. And if it was not for a James Harrison interception in the red zone when he returns it all the way, and a arguably one of the greatest catches of all time, maybe in the Super Bowl by Santonio Holmes, Big Ben doesn't walk out of there with another championship. His third one, he ran into Aaron Rodgers. If you look at the numbers, well, when you've been playing for 18 years, I'd hope you'd have somewhat numbers. And he's been with the same team the entire time. I'm just saying there is room for the conversation. If you look at the list, Joe Namath is on here. You look at Eli Manning on here, Mark Rippon on here. Eli Manning could be in consideration, obviously, and the number one worst quarterback of all time to win a Super Bowl, Trent Dilfer. The man who hosted the greatest segment of all time on SportsCenter, Dilfer's Dimes, every Tuesday morning, by far might be the worst quarterback ever to win a Super Bowl. You could put Joe Flacco on this list. I'll even put one of my own Ravens on there. Joe Flacco got carried by a great defense and got hot in the postseason on the offense. Joe Flacco, arguably, he won Super Bowl MVP that year. He won Super Bowl, and you could put him on the worst quarterback of all time. Nick Foles.
Now that you mentioned Dilfer, okay, maybe the list can at least exist. But, I mean, I think there's, there's still some questions up in the air for sure.
Now, I'm not saying Big Ben's a terrible quarterback. As much as my
you are a Ravens fan.
As much as my Raven patriotism comes in here, Big Ben's a good quarterback. I'll put that out there. But when it comes down to it, in the clutch gene, right now, Big Ben's the worst quarterback in that division by far.
Well, you think about it, I want to say it was ESPN that had a feature going on either on the last Monday Night Football or on Sunday. I can't even remember which off the top of my head. But they were kind of taking you through the quarterbacks of that division. And, when you kind of sit back, when they break down each team, you're like, man, you know what? Yeah, there is some validity to that. And it is kind of hard to think because, like Tom pointed out earlier in the comments talking about just how good his prime was, it is kind of hard when you get somebody with that kind of level of competitiveness at any point of his career to think at any point, whether it be age decline or not, that he might be the worst quarterback in his division. And I think we have gotten to that point.
Now, hot takes, again, they're supposed to be hot. They're supposed to be out there. And I think this one, especially because Andrew Bias was all blown up with me on this one. And so is Hunter Lucas, two of my good Steelers friends. I had to throw it out there. I would put Ben Roethlisberger in the Hall of Very Good. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer, Alex?
Well, with my White Sox attire and the championship banner behind me, I'll drop a baseball comparison and say kind of in the ballpark of like a Mark Burley. And that's kind of the consensus opinion with him is he's in the Hall of Very Good. He's not in the Hall of Fame. And I think you're kind of in the same boat with Roethlisberger. He's got borderline Hall of Fame credentials, but I just don't think he makes the cut. I think it's like you say, the Hall of 9.9 out of 10. Like, I think there's just not enough. He's certainly got to go down as bigger picture, like Tom says, bad now, but definitely was very good in his prime. But bigger picture, one of the better quarterbacks you'll see. It's just, but when you put it all together, I still don't think it's Hall of Fame worthy because obviously it's a awfully exclusive club.
Now, looking at the hot seat, and you are a little bit of a Chicago Bears fan, I believe. Matt
follower.
Nagy.
Let's say follower.
No, Matt Nagy is the highest person right now on the hot seat after what he did last week.
The hot seat was left on, and the Bears left for Arlington Heights, and they left the stove on. Like that's how hot it is. But yeah, I mean I'm kind of trying to figure out like Dan Orlovsky's opinions, like if he has taken it too far. I don't think so, with one exception. I think the field's requesting a trade if Nagy's not fired. Like that's probably where I draw the line. But I do think this has gone on long enough where it's like, you know, he made the comment about the Fields usage. Well, I'll take the blame for it. Of course you'll take the blame for it. You better take the blame for it. Like, what other answer are we going to expect you to give?
I feel he is so. This week alone has shown the level of his incompetence. If the last 5 months has not done it for you, this week alone, the fact that he is still not named Justin Fields his starter for Sunday just shows the level of incompetence that he has.
At this rate, Peyton Ramsey is going to start Sunday. Did you see that? The Northwestern QB was one of the ones that was trying out for. Now, I can't remember. It was him and one other quarterback. That one of them was prearranged before the Fields injury came up. The other one was post-injury, but one of them was actually organized prior to the knowing of the injury. So it would be kind of interesting to kind of pick into what the mindset might be behind that is, and maybe you could even go as far as to say the insanity behind having a guy like Ramsey. And I'm not saying he's bad by any means, but like, okay, so if this was before Fields was hurt, why, what the logic was behind trying Ramsey out, considering the setup you got right now. But, may the Bears be the Bears.
That will be the hot take, hot seat segment for week 1. I feel like we're off to a good start with the new segment. We're going to switch to the MLB here. The season ends on Sunday. Where are we? Well, we know for sure that the St. Louis Cardinals are in. They clinched 2 nights ago. We know for sure that the Milwaukee Brewers, the Tampa Bay Rays, Chicago White Sox, and Houston Astros are in. What are we waiting on? We're waiting on the AL West champion. No, that would be the Astros. So we're waiting basically on the wild card 1 and 2 in the American League and the first wild card and NL West champion in the MLB right now. And this will be pretty, it's my show. I'll kind of detail it to what I want, but we'll talk a little Cardinals here, and we can get to your White Sox, Alex. Crazy. 17 games. That is absolutely insane, I think. And if the Cardinals, counting today, if they go on a 16-game win streak, it means they swept the postseason, they win the wild card, and they are the World Series champions. It's doable. It's doable.
Well, at first, your first initial reaction is, okay, come on, what are the odds of them going on a 16-game win streak? What were we saying before? Like, if somebody had magically said, hey, they're going to – now, I guess Nolan Arenado had made the comment, watch, we're going to be in the wild card game.
Yes.
Oh, come on. No, we're going to be in the wild card game. Now, like, you think of crazy things like that, and you wouldn't have ever thought that not only would they get to the wild card game, but via a 17-game win streak. So, after that's happened now, I don't really know if you can say that you don't think it's going to happen, because, it darn well could. It's the quintessential definition of getting hot at the right time, and you just wonder. And I believe it was Ryan Vogel, you and I had mentioned this in a class period, or maybe it was Cody Roskins as well. There's a whole bunch of us talking about it, but talking about, the Cardinals need to have that loss before the playoffs, because I think the worst thing for them could have been continuing that win streak into the playoffs, because, think of it like, I'll use a good example, but tie it back into ICC women's basketball. The best thing for that team that went 32-3 in 2019, that went on a 32-game losing or win streak, was that the 3 losses were bang, bang, bang at the very beginning of the year, and then we ran the table after that. So you don't have the pressure of an undefeated season. You don't have the pressure, if you're the Cardinals, of continuing this historical win streak. I believe 20 or 22 would have been the all-time record if I saw a graphic on an earlier broadcast, right?
Yep.
But yeah, the point being that, you're hot at the right time, but at the same time, you need that loss, because, otherwise you could almost say they're riding too high of momentum into the playoffs. And I'm not saying it's nothing the Cardinals couldn't handle. I just, for the betterment of the franchise, you could say it'd probably be best to go on maybe like a 8 out of 10 pedestal instead of 10 out of 10.
And for the fans that were worried about Nolan Arenado not, opting back in, he's already said, hey, I'm here next year. He's opting in, and he'll formally let the Cardinals know here in the next week or so. Mike Schilt announces today that Adam Wainwright will start the wild card game, as he should. As he should. He has carried us through most of this year. And I saw the stat today. I don't know if you saw it. Let me find it here. It's about the Cardinals, and right here from Randy Karaker. In 2016, the Cardinals were eliminated in game 162. In 2017, it was game 158. In 2018, it was game 161. They've made the playoffs the last 3 seasons. Since the end of 2010, the Cardinals have played in a total of 4 regular season games in which they haven't had a chance to make the postseason. That's unbelievable right there.
Yeah, and I kind of look at it, and to add on to the slew of and this has kind of been one of those crazy leads into the postseason, and you can only imagine, considering all the stats we've been able to pull out of this, how crazy the actual postseason is going to be. You look at, for example, the soon-to-be Cleveland Guardians. I saw a stat because the White Sox had clinched the division in Cleveland, and the stat were like all but maybe 1 or 2 of the last 5 or 6 seasons, a team had either clinched a division, clinched a playoff series, or something of that nature at that ballpark. And I think that's just kind of one of those things where it's a wild ride.
Looking at, possible down the line World Series predictions, I mean, is it out of the world to maybe see the Cardinals and White Sox meet up in the Fall Classic?
I mean, I think it's not the most outlandish prediction you could make, but, and I know with your Cardinals fandom, I don't see the Cardinals having the advantage in a 1-game playoff. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they won it. I'm not saying they're not going to win it.
Right.
But I just don't think they're the advantaged team in that situation. And I'll cut to the chase and say, I think you know who I'm riding with in the American League. But I think it's tough. I got to say National League selection TBA. I think it's going to come down to that juggernaut of an NL West, because and at this rate, it's like, hey, everybody but the Diamondbacks. There's your National League for the the Diamondbacks. That's atrocious, but that's another story for another time, I suppose.
Looking at college football, we're gonna switch gears here. I don't know what it is. This year I'm not into it as much. I can't. I don't know if it's just because Illinois sucks. I don't know. Which, I mean, should be no different from the past. But were my expectations too high? For Illinois, I can't get into it this year. But we'll be down at Champaign Memorial Stadium on Saturday for the Charlotte game. They beat Duke earlier this year. They did have a really bad loss. I can't remember to who, but they beat Middle Tennessee State last week. And I mean, I think Illinois is on upset alert. I think they're favored by like 10.5, but I mean, if this team likes to pass the ball, and we know that we cannot defend the pass. I mean, you watch that UTSA game, that was point in case right there.
Yeah, and at this rate, I don't even know if I'm willing to call favorites or any of that at this point for Illinois, because it's like, what do you expect? Because like some teams that I may or may not work for, so I'm not going to go into details of what team it is, but where I go into the season with these really high expectations, and then the finish is kind of underwhelming, and it's kind of frustrating. And I can kind of understand that looking at it from an Illinois football perspective as well. Like, you get all this new hype, but Brett Bielema seems like he's the right guy for the job. You get the first win, and then this
fall
happens.
flat on your face is what happens right there.
And I feel bad because a couple of fans kind of jumped the gun. I don't know if you saw Bielema was supposed to have his coaches show tonight, I guess, and the original location had some sort of maintenance issue, so they weren't able to have it on site tonight. And of course, the two Inuit fans, if you will, were kind of saying, "Oh, well, they were, he wants to get out of it because he doesn't want to take on the fans or something like that." It's like, it's that's just part of a frustrated fan base when I think we don't love to have the Illini be any better than 1-4, quite frankly, right now. But that's just the way the cookie has crumbled this year. And I mean, I won't say this is maybe to the extent of that 63 zip loss to Iowa, that level, but I mean, come back and talk to me at the end of the season. I don't know. It might get to that point because I mean, shoot, I've only left a couple games early in my reporting career, and that was one of them. I left when it was 49-0, and I'd heard Gene Honda say touchdown Iowa twice before I got to my car.
That was the one I stayed until about for whatever reason, I stayed until about the fourth quarter for that one. I don't know why.
Hey, dedicated fan. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but then I left early for the Wisconsin game, but we'll leave that for a different day.
Oh, yeah, that.
Looking elsewhere, I think there's a lot of questions I think about a lot of teams in the college football world this year. You see a lot of question marks, and you see it from the committee that Oklahoma drops this week from outside the top. They're now outside the top 4. They've failed to cover against bad teams. And I'm not taking anything away from West Virginia. I think West Virginia is a very good team. But if Oklahoma wants to be this powerhouse and wants to compete for the college football playoff, they've got to be able to cover against a team like that. And they, week after week, have not been able to cover. So there's a lot of question marks there. I think Alabama is so far ahead of everyone else. Everyone's like, oh, will Florida give them up? No, that game was out of hand in the first half. And the second half, Florida made a late charge. But at the same time, you got to look at the fact of, did Alabama check out a little bit? They were up big. They still won the game. A win's a win. I think this week, a lot of the questions about Georgia might be answered. We haven't really seen Georgia get tested too well until week 1 against Clemson. But Clemson is starting to look like that may have not been, a very good team. So Arkansas and Georgia, that matchup this week, I think that winner obviously is likely going to be in the college football playoff. It's really a chance for Arkansas to solidify themselves as the top program. You look at Michigan and Wisconsin. Michigan seems to be having a better year. Wisconsin, highly overrated in my opinion. And again, I'm going to highlight the fact that we thought Graham Mertz was the second coming. He was everything that we've ever asked for in a college football quarterback because he threw for 5,000 yards and 200 touchdowns against Illinois in a COVID year.
And much to the dismay of Illinois fans, because that was their one game prior, the highlight package for the next broadcast, of course, shows him shredding up the Illinois defense, and just lovely, I'm sure, for the Illinois fan base to watch through that.
And we're asking ourselves about Michigan this year. Are they for real? Is it all smoke and mirrors? Is it going to be all of this just to lose to Ohio State again?
We ask that every year, don't we?
I mean, true. Looking at other matchups, you got Cincinnati and Notre Dame. I still can't buy into Notre Dame. I'm not saying that they're overrated. I don't know, because, that win against Wisconsin, yeah, they had a great fourth quarter, but before that, it was a little closer than what you'd like, and maybe Wisconsin's not as good as we think. They barely survived against Florida State, which we know what happened to Florida State after that week 1 loss. Notre Dame escapes against Toledo, didn't play great against Purdue. And I think they'll get a really good test this week when Cincinnati comes in. Cincinnati beat Indiana earlier this year. That'll be an interesting matchup to look at. Ole Miss at Alabama. Alabama's going to get another good test this week. I think Ole Miss could be for real. With their quarterback, Matt Corral, has played himself into Heisman contention, and I think they're in good shape. But I really just don't know if anyone's going to be able to truly test Alabama this year.
Yeah, and I think that narrative is going to continue for as long as can be. Like I would, it's just one of those things. And not to circle back to girls basketball, but that's kind of what I've said with Morton, right? As long as Bob Becker is the head coach of that program, they're going to contend for a Middle Illini title. Kind of the same thing with Alabama football. Is I feel like as long as that's a Saban run program, I just don't see them fading away from what we all know and love, maybe not love, depending on who you talk to, in that Crimson Tide program. That's just kind of the way things are, and love it or hate it, that's like I said, the way the Tide roll.
My upset specials of the week could include Ole Miss over Alabama. I wouldn't put it past it. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but it could happen. Could happen. Arkansas over Georgia. I actually feel confident with that one. I feel Arkansas can go in and get the job done over Georgia. Then Mississippi State over Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M was pretty hot to start the year. I think Mississippi State's had a few things go against them this year. But those are my upset specials of the week. From the college level, we'll go to the NFL. We'll hit my top 10, and then we'll end things with our weekly pigskin pick'em. I think the story of the week right now is obviously the Bears looking to move out of the city of Chicago, looking at Arlington Heights and the horse track out there. What are your thoughts on the Bears wanting to move away from Soldier Field, where they've been for the last 50 years, I believe?
Oh, there you go. You were kind of frozen there for a second, but I know what you were getting into. And I think with that whole, right now it's a mess. Let's be honest, it's a mess right now. But I eventually think this is going to be the right move, because it's been some time that you find yourself talking more about the negatives of a venue like Soldier Field than the positives. And some of the national narrative has been talking about how behind that venue is in terms of the larger scape of venues all across the NFL. And you look at the opportunity that Arlington Heights presents, and I think it's something that you can't turn away if you're the Chicago Bears. And I mean, sure, anytime you relocate, and I put that in air quotes because, they move the home field, but, not by a whole lot. But still, anytime you get a relocation of a team at the professional sports level, it's, going to be met by a lot of conflict, and a lot of people are going to love it just as much. And, I would think I'm on the pro Arlington Heights side because, I just don't think Soldier Field is fitting it right now. I've said I classify as a Bears follower, not a full-on fan. I'm quite frankly not free enough sometimes to watch as much as I would like, but I just think that's the better thing to do because I'm tired of it being called the sauce, or what was it, the UFO, the spaceship that is Soldier Field. Like, can we just move past that? And I feel like sometimes, and you look at it, that to a degree you could say Malone Field is, at least the surface itself, is taken care of better. But and now that's not a dig on any party. That's a major compliment to Coach Ryan, and I believe Coach Kieswetter does some work with it as well. But and when you get that kind of facility and you get that kind of care, I think it almost mandates a move to Arlington Heights. And I think that's just, like I said, circling back to what I said moments ago, it's the right way to go.
We could talk about Chicago all day and how much of a dumpster fire it is right now. I think without this Chicago White Sox baseball team, this city could literally be on fire because of how bad just the dumpster fire in Soldier Field, the dumpster fire at Wrigley. The Bulls seem to be kind of trending upward a little bit, but Chicago White Sox are carrying this city on its back right now. And so I digress a little bit. NBC this week, the Brady returns to New England, Brady Belichick whole thing. NBC is really beating the dead horse this week on it. I mean, the Today Show will be there, and I believe they'll be doing all of the pregame and whatnot from New England, Foxborough. I mean, do you? I can't for whatever reason I cannot get up hyped about this. I think I know Tanner Kern, who works here at Sports 2.0 and at Noop with us. He's a big Patriots guy, big Boston guy. So I know he's excited. I know Jack Moore probably would be excited. But other than that, I mean, I could care less about this game. I don't think it's gonna. Besides the homecoming, I mean, this game's not even gonna be close. Tampa Bay's gonna blow them out of the water.
Yeah, and I mean, I think and you and I can both speak to this from our albeit limited sports media experience over the years, and just blowing a game out of proportion. Like, Metamora, Washington, don't get me wrong, is the biggest football game of the year for Redbird country, and I'm sure for Panther country as well. But at the same time, you're not going to see Channel 25 or 31 or any of the local radio stations, live and on site on game day, and, even if we had this massively like Brady Belichick level storyline, it's just, it's going to get attention. Don't get me wrong, but they've really blown this out of proportion in terms of the coverage. And I mean, shoot, you even saw Belichick go up to the podium and say, "Hey, we got any stories this week?" Like, and because he may kind of say that with a little bit of a smirk, but he's annoyed as heck over all this because it's like, and not only is this on paper or just by having scouted either of these teams going to be a blowout. Wanted to make sure I said the right number of words. 3 words that should scare the heck out of whomever the opponent is, and that's motivated Tom Brady. Coming off the loss, yes, it is a homecoming. I'm sure he's not going to let that be too much of a factor in the game, but the worst thing that could happen to New England is Tampa Bay coming off a loss. In terms of, you were already in trouble. Now you got this hungry, really good football team coming off a loss. And even though that's the case, I decided to neither start Brady nor suck up for my fantasy lineup this week. I've taken them both out.
We're going to look at my believe Colton's top 10 4.0, I believe, because this would be week 3. Or this would be week 4, and I did a preseason one. So, yes, it'll be Colton's top 10 4.0. We can get it. There we go. Last week, I've got 4 teams from last week's top 10 that are not in this week's top 10. So quite a big shuffle this week. I said last week that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would stay at number 1 until they got beat. They got beat last week. So we've got a little bit of a reshuffle here. We'll give it an honorable mention this week. I kind of toyed with throwing them in there, but still going to take a little bit of time. The Cincinnati Bengals are this week's honorable mention. I don't think Pittsburgh has a good win against Pittsburgh last week. They've beat Pittsburgh in their last 2 meetings. But my feelings towards Pittsburgh and their offense, I don't know. Number 10, I've got the Green Bay Packers. I still have yet to buy in. I know Aaron Rodgers is really good. I don't doubt him. I just doubt the rest of that team. Unfortunately, the 49ers gave Aaron Rodgers too much time last week. Number 9, I've got the Cleveland Browns. Number 8, the Dallas Cowboys. I think that offense is as good as any offense in the NFL. The defense, on the other hand, I don't know. But they did what they had to and did what they should last week against the Eagles. Number 7, I got the Buffalo Bills. They kind of stay right in there, just ahead of them. And at number 6, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. Survive a scare last week against the Lions. But, hey, a win's a win. Number 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is where they fall. From number 1 to number 5. Number 4, the Carolina Panthers. I'm getting my way. If the Panthers win this week against the Cowboys, oh boy. We got a comment here from
Hey Rob. That's one of the women's basketball players' dads. Season's coming up here in a couple weeks here, 20 days until the first broadcast or so.
But back to Carolina, I think they could be legit, and they might give Tampa Bay a run for that money in that division. Number 3 all the way is undefeated Las Vegas Raiders. I kind of doubted them this year, and a lot of people did really, and they found their way in. The Arizona Cardinals come in at number 2, and this is a big week for them because I think they have the offense to do it, and I think if getting Kyler Murray out of the pocket can sometimes be a little bit of a disaster, and if that defensive line forces Kyler Murray out of the pocket, it could spell disaster for the Rams. But at number 1 on Colton's 4.0 top 10, the Los Angeles Rams. I finally bought into the Rams hype. Rodney came on the show before the season, and he has the Rams as his NFC team in the Super Bowl, and I'm finally buying into the hype. The defense is there. I've always known the defense was there, but I still just couldn't buy into Matt Stafford. But last week's performance, I'm bought in.
Yeah, and I think I'm not going to go to the extent of clear-cut Super Bowl appearance for LA, but I mean, there's certainly no doubting that whatsoever.
We will get into our pigskin pick'em, and that will be it for us here tonight. So, Alex, this is the one job that you had to come in with. You didn't really have to do much. You just had to sit here and deal with me. But first game in the pigskin pick'em, number 8, Arkansas at number 2, Georgia. I got the Razorbacks in this one.
Yeah, Hogs are riding a pretty hot team this fall, and I expect them to carry that into this week.
Now, this one might go a little bit into your comfort zone, but number 7, Cincinnati at number 9, Notre Dame. I've got Cincinnati in a close one.
Why would I go against my Irish? Sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice, but the Irish, I think they picked a good game to play like garbage. The game that was only on Peacock. But that's a whole nother story. You and I were in that class at Bradley where we kind of talked about that whole situation. But yeah, I'm never picking against, like, I would say probably Alabama level teams are about the only time I'm going to go against my fandom for the Irish.
Looking at the Pigskin Pick'em leaderboard, Tanner last week overtakes Rodney in first place at 8-3. Rodney at 7-4, and through about 5 weeks, I am at 23-15. Not great, but hey, it's a winning record. Game number 3, number 12, Ole Miss at Alabama. As much as I'd like an upset, it's going to be Roll Tide in this one.
I'm going to go really specific here because I'm just feeling a particular vibe. 38-35 tied in overtime.
Ooh, in overtime. That would be interesting to see. Alabama taken to the brink there. Last college game, number 6, Oklahoma at Kansas State. I've done a lot of articles here in the last few weeks for BetUS, and I do a weekly Big 12 preview, and I have picked Oklahoma to cover for about the last 5 weeks, and they have yet to cover besides a couple of games. Oklahoma will win, but they won't cover. And we'll keep it with status quo here this week.
Kansas State.
Alex going with the upset. Kansas State.
Hold on. We need to stop that upset narrative because Kansas State is actually on a 2-win streak in this series. So although on paper it might still be an upset, and Rob, if he's still watching, will appreciate this. Something that that's like a no to use that word with ICC in terms of an upset. And I don't think this would be an upset if Kansas State pulls this off. Not just looking at the team, but looking at the fact that they've won the last 2 meetings with Oklahoma in the single digits of the rankings. So don't be surprised if K-State pulls this one off.
Looking at the NFL, Detroit at Chicago. I picked Cleveland last week. I think I'm 3 for 3 on Chicago, and I'm hoping to go 4 for 4 if they win this week. Chicago doesn't like it. He doesn't like it, folks. But he's gonna go with Chicago. I think if they lose this week, Nagy's got to be fired. It has to happen.
Yeah. Well, see, so here's the thing. I'm borderline because of the forecast. I might be at guaranteed rate on Sunday. So you've got White Sox, you got the Bears, and then dabbling in WNBA for a second, the Chicago Sky playoff game is at the same time as the Bears, and so Chicago's going to be bustling, but I think it's going to be bustling with angry Bears fans because, the Lions just, they're the Lions, and the Bears are the Bears, so I think you got dumpster versus maybe slightly bigger dumpster, in this week, but I think the Bears, God willing, pull it out.
We're going to get through these next few real quick because we want to get you into Thursday Night Football. We'll go Carolina at Dallas. I like Dallas a lot this year. I'll take Dallas in this one.
Yeah, Dallas, and that's a pretty clear-cut pick for me as well.
Looking here, we've got Arizona at LA. I think this is going to be a really good game. Arizona's lost the last 8 meetings against the Rams, and I think they make it 9 straight.
Yeah, I think they can certainly make it competitive, but I'm thinking maybe around a 2-score game in favor of the Rams.
Pittsburgh at Green Bay, 2 teams I'm not entirely bought in on each other. I don't like this pick, but I'll take Green Bay.
Yeah, I started off with some early optimism about Pittsburgh, and I'm not saying that's completely faded, but it's faded enough, at least in this particular matchup, that I'm going to have to side with Rodgers and company.
Sunday Night Football, looking at Tampa at New England. Tampa in a landslide.
Yeah, this isn't even going to be close. High school football, we've had some borderline running clock games here recently, at least the ones that we've been at. And I think, if we had those rules for Tampa Bay, New England, we might be getting kind of close to that. And that might sound kind of extreme, but I think we're talking the 3-4 score, maybe even more than that range for the Bucks.
Vegas at the Chargers, Monday Night Football on ESPN. I'll take Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas. I'll go with them as well.
And then tonight's game that kicks off in just a few minutes, Jacksonville at Cincinnati, our first look at Trevor Lawrence in the NFL on national TV. I will take the Cincinnati Burros.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the over-publicized stat, looking at that, it's I think the first time since, 2009, since national championship winning quarterbacks have faced off. But, Trevor Lawrence has got to remember, this is not the Clemson Tigers. This is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, quite frankly, the peak of Lawrence's time with Clemson probably would beat. But yeah, this is going to be Joe Burrow's game to win.
Well, there you have this week's Pigskin Pick'em. We'll see how Alex fares on next week's leaderboard. Alex, thanks for joining me and coming on tonight.
Happy to be part of it.
That will do it for us here this week on the Colten Kahler Show. Mark your calendars. Next week, Metamora baseball legend and current San Diego Padres minor leaguer Ethan Skinner will join the show, so we're looking forward to that one next week. But again, for this week, that'll do it for us here on the Sports 2.0 Network and on the Colten Kahler Show. We'll see you next week.